Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
I've been to Guatemala, Costa Rica, Moscow, Bucharest, Budapest, Munich, and Helsinki.
Wow. And just in the past month?
Yes.
And this is all specifically for Up?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, this isn't fun.
It's not fun.
Well, it has moments of fun.
Right.
The way I describe our travel is that every moment is individually and exciting and fascinating, and collectively it sucks because it's abusive from a physical perspective. So it's amazing to do it. The things you do and the people you see and the partners you meet and the impact you can have is all just phenomenal. And then you come back and you just feel like you're drained, and it takes you 2 or 3 days or a week to recover. One of our guys was just in South Africa. He lives in Mexico City. Just got a mail from him yesterday. He said, "Good news is I went to the doctor and I don't have pneumonia, but I've got severe bronchial blah blah blah, and I'm on 3 different antibiotics and I can't go anywhere for 2 weeks." And he was feeling really bad because he's grounded for 2 weeks. It's a 36-hour flight, a 36-hour door-to-door from South Africa to Mexico City. Can you imagine that? Mind-numbing, huh?
Oh, ow.
So anyhow, business travel is not what we call glamorous, but it's the mission, right?
Means to an end.
It absolutely means to an end, and that's why we do it.
Now, are you doing the same thing in each location, or are there variations on the theme?
Lots of variations on the theme. The reason why James and I were in Central and Eastern Europe a couple weeks ago was for our regional announce of Unlimited Potential, and we've been we and my co-leader Orlando Ayala have been traveling around the world doing these regional launches since April. Bill Gates did the launch in Beijing, and I was there with him, as well as Orlando in April. And so we've basically been going around, and we're all gone. So there's been India, Africa, 2 events in Africa, Central and Eastern Europe, a couple more in LATAM, one in China,
Brazil,
right?
The handful that we've done in Europe.
Yeah.
I think there was something in North Africa.
Yeah. Right, in Burkina Faso. Yeah. So.
Say that again,
That's
like
actually-
3 times fast.
Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
It's the answer to a trivia question. What is the new name for Upper Volta?
Right.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Well,
I think that's actually West Africa.
Right. Exactly.
Now, did you guys travel much before you got involved with this particular program with Microsoft, or?
Well, James has the best
Personally,
travel story.
I traveled almost the same amount in my old job in the Dynamics business where I worked in accounting software, but all of my travel was to either Fargo, North Dakota or Copenhagen because we had 2 companies that we acquired in each of those areas. So for the last 5 years, I was in each of those cities about 40 times.
I had a little bit more variety in my travel, thankfully.
You got to Iowa once.
That was a long time ago.
Oh.
But for business travel,
Oh, sure.
I ran the Windows business before this, and so that took me all over the world. So more, 3/4 in developed markets and a quarter in developing markets. I was just up on Facebook, and they have a little widget there that lets you mark which cities you've been in. And so I was just seeing how their widgets work, and so I just started clicking all the cities I've been in, and the world map started getting lots of little push pins all over it. So there's some continents you can't really see because the push pins are covered.
Wow.
The whole thing. So, but that again comes with the territory.
Yeah. So, okay, in a mission statement, even though it's difficult to wrap something so philanthropy based into a mission statement, what exactly is Unlimited Potential?
Well, let me start by saying.
And I'll ask, I'll ask you both.
Yeah, what it is it's a combination of business and philanthropy. And it's actually a fairly unique thing for Microsoft and actually for the IT industry to bring the mission of trying to, this guy at University of Michigan called C.K. Prahalad, he says, do well by doing good, which is a very nice, simple statement. But try to bring the concept of your corporate social responsibility and philanthropy together with the concept of building a scalable business that addresses the needs of people that are in your target zone, if you will, in the area where you really think you want to bring the most value. And so the mission for Unlimited Potential is to bring social and economic opportunity to the next 5 billion. and it's actually to help bring social and economic opportunity to the next 5 billion, because we're not going to do it alone. And we do that by a combination of developing businesses and by applying our corporate social responsibility and citizenship activities, doing all these things in partnership with global partners, with local partners, with governments, and so on.
Now, what does it mean to you on a personal level? I mean, because I can't imagine this.
Right.
I mean, this has got to be more than a job. I mean,
Oh,
you're
totally.
giving so much of yourself. I mean, your time and just your energy to this. It's got to hit you on a personal level.
Yeah, I mean, what it means to me is, first of all, being able to give back at scale. To be able to do something that, you can make donations to a nonprofit, you can send some money here or there, you can go donate your time. Those are all good things, but if you can donate your time in a way that actually builds a scalable business that then does good things, so it's not in any way capped by what my personal donation is, or James, or anybody else, or by what the company can spend. There's really no limit to how much technology can benefit people of the world, and how we can become really have a key role in helping technology bring value to people. And so the thing that it means to me personally, though, is when I go and see people. And I go out on the road, like, I was in Athens, and we made a donation along with Intel to a children's hospital. Now, this children's hospital has a school in the hospital, and it has a handful of teachers who do one-on-one tutoring for kids that are in for extended periods of time. And they handle a couple hundred kids a year, and they can only spend an hour a day with the kids. Well, the kids are in there because they're really sick, right? And so here the kids are now, they're getting an hour a day of schooling, which keeps them from getting too far behind in schoolwork. Well, we donated these classmate laptops along with Intel, so now that the teachers can leave them with a lesson plan on a laptop that they sit there and use for the rest of the day as they're able. And all of a sudden, these kids are now, not only are they learning and staying up with their schoolwork, but they're also staying in touch with their friends and family. Imagine how that would transform your experience of being a 10-year-old in a hospital bed for 3 weeks. If you had communication with the world at all times available to you through a simple laptop that you can, lay over in bed and use, just like many of us do. We've got nothing better to do, to read at night. And here they can do that as a kid in a hospital in Athens. Every story like that, and we all have hundreds of them. Every time you do one of those things, you feel like, hey, this could not happen without technology, and it couldn't happen without us and our partners all working together to bring that technology to people in a way that's scalable like this.
All right, so what does it mean to you, James?
Will and I, in our careers at Microsoft, have both had the opportunity to work on a lot of incubations. He started a bunch of our products in the digital media space. In the 90s, I worked on Com+, BizTalk, and .NET, and helped get those technologies off the ground. What we're doing now is incubating new technologies for poor people. And what brings it home to me is a visit I did to Mumbai in the spring. And if you've ever been there, Mumbai is a city of extremes.
I've never been there.
Right next to gold-plated office towers are some of the worst-looking shanties in the world. And you literally drive from shanty right to the security gate to go into some office building that makes the ones in downtown Bellevue look kind of shabby. And when you drive through the shanty town, you realize that people there are people who don't have the resources we have, but they have the same hopes, dreams, they watch television, they buy things. It's a market. And increasingly in the emerging market space, we're beginning to realize that market models might be the most effective means to deliver services to these communities. Governments are coming to us and they're saying the direct aid model hasn't proven effective. You can't just take money and dump it into a country and assume automatically it's going to transform itself into a higher standard of living for people, stronger institutions, sustainable education, ecosystem investments, etc. And
It's the teach the man to fish.
precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's why the team here has put together a very sound strategy where we're focusing on 3 core areas that are related: education, local innovation, and jobs and opportunity. So the incubations that we're doing are organized around these 3 areas. So when we talk about education, it's about using computers to improve how education is delivered to kids around the world. It needs to be done in a locally sustainable manner. The model where large corporations or large governments can directly be like an octopus and immediately feed things into citizens locally doesn't work unless you create the local agencies, the local businesses, the local software infrastructure, the local software ecosystem to make it sustainable. One of the blogs I wrote about that school I saw in Guatemala where there was this cool looking satellite dish in the top of the school, and I asked like, what's that for? And they looked at each other and said, we don't know. Someone installed it 2 years ago to give internet access to the school, but then they stopped paying their satellite bill, so it just sits there.
Oh no.
And the world is littered with stories like this where good intentions go awry because there's no sustainable piece to it.
But let me tell you a story, though, to your point on jobs and opportunities and sustainability. So I was in Sao Paulo in a community technology learning center, CTLC. We've got these hundreds of them around the world that we work in partnership with some local government or NGO or school or whatever it might be. And I walked into this place, and it smelled really good. And there's a bakery in there. Why do they have a bakery in basically a school for budding geeks, right? Well, the reason is they found out that the kids that were coming there learned much better if they had a full stomach. And they actually had a lot more people that were attracted there because they could offer them food. So they got a grant to make food for them every day, and that helped fill up their classroom. They told me and introduced me to a kid who was one from one of the worst slums in Sao Paulo. And this kid had come there and learned desktop publishing skills and had gone into business using a computer and just a printer they have there, making business cards. And rather than becoming a kid that ended up in some life of crime or without any means of supporting himself, he actually was a little local entrepreneur, and he made business cards just using the services that this nonprofit that we help support in Sao Paulo could pull together. And it's just phenomenal to see that transformation of technology, again, enabling somebody to come from having no opportunity to opportunity. And that's what's so exciting, to see these things happen in the microcosm, but also then to see how do you put in systems in place such that they can happen globally and sustainably, not all based on nonprofit grants, but actually based on people doing business, making money in the process of helping others create opportunity.
Now, in terms of the places that you're walking into, and of course each place is going to be different, are you finding any technology infrastructure? I mean, you bring up the story of finding a satellite dish that's pointing really to nowhere at this point. Are you finding anything else in place that is either working but in a dilapidated way, or the start of something and then nothing got finished? And how do you address that differently than you do walking into a place that has absolutely nothing?
That's actually the purpose for most of our visits out to these far corners of the world, because as an organization at Microsoft, we've got salespeople and a field execution engine in these different countries that we operate in, but we also have an R&D team here in Redmond, and we're going on these visits because we're piloting and incubating technologies that address some of these issues that we're trying to solve in this area of the digital divide, whether it's low-cost and shared PCs that can be used in classrooms, whether it's internet cafes and different types of subscription computing models, whether it's various types of training centers that we're putting in place. So Will's got a team of engineers that are incubating a whole bunch of interesting and cool PC and mobile technology to address these different areas, and we go out and visit on the road to see how it's going.
But I think the important point here is they don't all succeed. And in fact, we see as many things through all of our partners and our own work, we see as many things fail as we see succeed. And maybe more, because that's our job. And when I learned downhill skiing many years ago, and somebody was teaching me said, well, so did you fall down in the last round? I said, no. He said, you're not trying hard enough, right? So look, if you're not trying new things and seeing things that work and also things that fail, it means you're not really trying, you're not reaching far enough. I visited some rural places in India where they had worked on having what they call a kiosk, which is basically just a two PC iCafe in a cinder block building on the side of somebody's house with a satellite connection or maybe a DSL connection. In this case, actually, it was proprietary technology, broadband fixed wireless. And the one I visited actually had recently stopped being very active. And the reason for it is the person that was running it got skilled enough that she was hired by a local company, and there was nobody left that knew how to run the thing. And the guy that ran this whole network of these rural kiosks basically said about half of them are working and half of them aren't at any one time, because it all depends on whether we can attract somebody that is young, smart, and stays there long enough to really build up the usefulness of this system and get the villagers using it and get the services around agriculture or education or whatever it might be going. And if they disappear because they got a better job in the city, then the thing falls into disrepair. So, but this is all part of what you learn about on how do you build things that are self-sustaining, how do you build things that don't require somebody to write a check every month for the satellite or whatever it might be, such that they can actually go and operate over time.
So how do you measure success? I mean, you can obviously see it in the face of a child or a succeeding business or ideas that are generated from the seeds that you plant. But really, I mean, can this really be boiled down to a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint presentation? I mean,
we get asked this by our internal board here at the office.
I'm sure you do. I mean, I got that question.
So you ask a very reasonable question.
Well, but to me, it's different because I'm not on your team. I'm not on the board or anything.
But my point is, it's a hard question, and the simple answer is that we do not measure it by our P&L every quarter. We don't measure it by how much more money do we make versus last quarter, or about what our contribution margin is. There are a lot of ways we don't measure it, because those are the way you measure a large existing business or a solely for-profit startup business. What we are, given we have this unique blend of trying to be both a business but also corporate social responsibility activity at the same time, is we actually look at how well do we infuse the value of technology to people in our target area, which is middle and bottom of the economic pyramid. We haven't talked about that yet, so I'll come back to that in a minute. But we look at basically how many people can we help touch with technology. It doesn't mean how many more people buy PCs. It means how many more people have access to PCs, as an example. It doesn't mean does Microsoft sell them cell phones. It means do people get access to things that matter to them on their cell phone as a result of things that we do. For example, an agricultural price report that can be available via SMS to a rural farmer in Indonesia. So we look at how well are we infusing the value of technology more broadly into this population that currently does not have sufficient access to or get value from technology. And let me talk to you about the pyramid for a minute, because I think this is important.
The pyramid, yes.
Yeah. So
not a Ponzi scheme, but
no. This is a simple way to look at the population of the world. Right. So
they give you $10. And you turn
yeah, right. Well,
yeah. Okay.
You'll have 1,000.
The concept is simply called the economic pyramid, and you think about a pyramid in which there's a billion people at the top. There's then about 2 billion people in the middle, and 3 billion at the bottom, 6 billion. So the world's a little bit bigger than that right now, but in rough numbers, 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion. And you define the lines between the 3 and the 2 and the 2 and the 1 by their income level. And the income level is roughly $6,000 between 3 and 2, so between bottom and middle, and it's roughly $22,000 between middle and top. And that then helps you understand what the challenges are as you try to bring technology to people, how many of them there are, where they are, and how much money do they have to spend on technology and services all up. Or technology, services, food, housing, everything that matters to them. So we think about this economic pyramid, and then the focus of Unlimited Potential Group is to focus only on the middle and bottom of the economic pyramid. People come to us with some new ideas saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did blah, blah, blah in India? And we said, well, that sounds neat, but that's kind of focused on the top of the pyramid in India. And there's plenty of tops there, by the way. There are tops everywhere in the world. There's also middles and bottoms everywhere in the world. And our challenge is to figure out what are the unique ways to bring the value of technology to the middles and bottoms. And that's really what Unlimited Potential is all about.
Do you see a lot of those, I'm not going to say exact same scenarios, but even stateside, even in this country, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we're talking about
You don't
a global.
have to go very far from this very nice coffee shop in Redmond to find people that are in middle or bottom of the economic pyramid.
We made a very conscious decision in creating this group to not make it geographically or organized. So even though we've got field resources in half the world where a significant amount of the population is in the two bottom layers of the pyramid, we easily envision seeing our services being deployed in the US and Western Europe.
And you talked about a partner like Intel. Are you working with other companies, large and small, to kind of empower the rest of the world?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I say the rest of the world, I don't mean that I'm looking down on them. I'm saying that I am lucky enough to live in that upper 1 billion.
Right. We say the next 5 billion.
Yeah.
Right. There's the first billion that's had the benefit of technology, and the technology industry's done a really good job for them. And there's the next 5 who, other than through mobile phones, have really not gotten much benefit from technology. So the next 5 is the target, and we are working with Intel, with AMD. We're working with non-governmental organizations, NGOs. We're working with UN organizations, lots of different partners. We're working a lot with local governments. When we were in Moscow, we launched a center there that was in partnership with the State Pedagogical Academic Library, big fancy library in the middle of Moscow, and they allocated a room half the size of this coffee shop to be used for a training center, basically, to help people get access to the internet and learn skills, whether it's use of PC skills or simply how to browse for information and find things, and to get that for free without having to pay for it. And there's 50 of these around around Russia, and these are all done by a American NGO that operates in Russia, and we're basically just a partner of theirs to make this happen.
You were going to say, James?
I don't know if you've been to Moscow, but it's pretty much a top of the pyramid city these days.
Yeah.
But again, it was an example of our working with a local organization that was focusing on the people as opposed to a particular region.
When people first get online, onto the internet, onto the web, are you there when that happens? And what kind of reaction do they have? I mean, are you able to explain exactly what the internet is? I mean, to open the world.
I'll tell you a good experience on that one. So how about, forget about getting online, how about a farmer in rural China seeing the first PC he's ever seen? So we launched this thing back in April, these things called info wagons, which are, imagine a city bus that's got a training room basically with 15 PCs on it and a screen in the front. So it's a long, skinny training room. And they drive, this is actually done in partnership with the government organization who wants to help these rural farmers improve their agricultural productivity through technology. They're wiring up all these villages. They're getting fiber out to all these villages, but there's no PCs there. And even if there were PCs, the farmers don't know what to do with them. So they go to this info wagon concept. And with the info wagon concept, they can then drive these buses around these villages, have farmers file onto the bus, sit down in front of a PC for the very first time in their life, and hear a half an hour lecture and actually get hands-on experience about what the PC could do with them to help them be better farmers, to help them be better parents, to help their kids learn math skills, whatever it might be. And so I stood outside of one of these things as the farmers came off the bus, and I spoke with an interpreter. Well, what was it like? He's like, this is really amazing. Have you ever seen a PC before? No, never seen one. What do you think? Well, I think it could help. They still don't really know, it's their first hour with exposure to technology, but it's phenomenal. And then to think about how that person's life will be transformed over the next 2, 3, 5 years as communications and PC technology becomes available to them.
Have you heard of our local language program?
The local language program?
The local language program.
No, I've missed this one.
So, Windows and Office are sold around the world in 37 official languages where it's fully localized and you install it. But there's hundreds, if not thousands, of languages in the world. And let's say you're in Mongolia or Nepal, countries that have a language that is not on the list of 37, and you're trying to introduce PCs to farmers. We've got a layered program where we can do these local language packs or a local language dictionary that inserts into the Windows and Office experience local language terms for different parts of the system. But then we've got this community-driven program that helps people in a given culture or country where they speak the local language to come up with the terms that they use. So the coolest story that we've heard about this occurred in Nepal, where the government decided they wanted to do a local language for PCs in Nepalese, and they organized a series of Saturday morning radio call-in shows. And they would describe a particular feature, like, I've got this thing, in English they call it a mouse. It's a little box that I use, and when I move it, it moves a little arrow on the screen. What should we call this? And people would dial into the radio show with suggestions, and the DJ after a couple of hours would say, okay, well, we've got all the suggestions, and it looks like the consensus is that we're going to call it a yak paw or something like that. And it's...
He made that up.
Okay, I didn't know that was...
But it sounded good.
It does, it sounds
He made up the
great.
yak pod part. The rest of
Well,
it's true.
it would just be as weird to a Nepalese person to say, why on earth do you call that thing a mouse?
Yeah.
Like mice or something. But they create this local dictionary of computer parts, and it just becomes part of like introducing technology into that country. So we've done this now for I think 78 languages. We can give you a pointer to it. It's this cool like Windows
kinda neat.
feature that we really don't
But
evangelize too much.
That's neat.
And the most important thing here is, again, if you think about connecting technology to people, even in an area like Latin America, where Spanish is broadly spoken, but if you go down the economic pyramid, they often speak in a very local language that has no relationship to Spanish at all. It's the local Mayan derivative, Incan derivative language. And so being able to show them that they can get access to the world of the internet, they get access to technology and information in the language that they speak every day, gives them a sense of empowerment and connection that they otherwise would feel disenfranchised because they're having to speak in the foreign language, not their local language, in order to get access to the technology.
So, for example, in Guatemala, I think the country has a population of 12 million people. There's an indigenous language called Quiche, which is spoken by over 1 million people there. And this fall, we're announcing a Quiche local language pack for Windows, so that when you boot and install Windows and install this pack, the terms are all in Quiche, so you don't have to teach someone technology and Spanish in order to use a computer.
And then with the community glossary that James described, we not only make that as part of our system, but it's also available to any software developer there. So if somebody's going to go and be a ISV to write a Quiche school application to teach math or language skills or whatever it might be, they can actually use that exact same glossary in their software in order to have the right local terms and to make the whole system work in the local language.
Okay, so we're talking about software now. What about licensing? Because, obviously, Microsoft has had a long history of piracy of their software. How open are you with licensing to not just countries, but communities that just can barely afford a cup of coffee, let alone an operating system?
Let me not evade your question, but give you another answer first, and then I will come back to the licensing point, because I think it's a very important question. If you go back in time about 4 years, we thought that the problem that we had around adoption of PCs and people getting our software, we thought that problem was pricing, meaning licensing. And so we thought we had an affordability problem. To make a long story short, we found out that affordability is the third of 3 problems. The first problem is relevance. That means, does the technology actually mean something to the local person in their life? That can start with language. It can then be looking at, does it solve a problem in education or agriculture or things that really matter to them? The second problem was then access. Can you actually get something? Can you get a piece of technology? Can you get the software? Can you get broadband access? If you do get it, how do you support it? How do you take care of it over time? These are both things that we all take for granted in the first billion. But for the next 5, relevance and access turn out to be the 2 biggest issues. The third one is then pricing or licensing. And it's one that we've actually been pretty aggressive on. I'll bring the first example of this. It's a thing called Windows Starter Edition. People in the United States have never seen this. They might have heard about it, but they've never seen it because we don't actually sell it here. We sell it in developing economies, and it sells for about half the price of Windows Home. So we hit the price point immediately by dropping the price way down in Starter Edition. That's grown to over 2 million unit sales as of this summer, and it's been picking up very, very rapidly. So that basically sells on lower cost PCs to help address the problem of affordability. With Office, we went and did a model of prepaid Office, meaning that just like people buy time on their phone by the minute, which again, this is the standard model that people use phones in developing economies, and it's not at all standard in a developed economy like the United States. People buy their minutes in advance. Well, they can now buy time on Office in advance. And they don't have to buy the whole package. They basically buy it as they need it. They buy an hour a day, whatever it might be. I met a family in Romania 2 weeks ago, and they bought a PC to educate their high school kid using Microsoft Math on there. They're very excited about that, and he was doing better in math as a result of it. The mom was using Office Prepaid for her home small business. She'd buy it as she needed it and move on. Here, those are two examples of how we've addressed the problem of affordability or pricing, so that people can get genuine software, the quality and everything else that comes with it, but also get it in a payment model that works for them. And James is about to show you a really neat card here that gives this idea even better.
What is this again?
This is what we call MSIS, which is the physical manifestation of the Microsoft Student Innovation Suite. And when we launched our Unlimited Potential group in Beijing in the spring, Bill Gates got up on stage and made a lot of news around what the press called $3 Windows. And it's actually a suite of Microsoft products, Windows, Office Student and Home Edition, Microsoft Math, and Learning Essentials, that we license to governments for $3 as part of
Per seat.
as part of programs that they put in place where they subsidize the purchase of PCs for students within their country. So similar to what's taking place with, he's getting out his cards now, similar to what many countries are doing with the Intel Classmate PC. There's a big deal that's being announced today in Russia with the Asus EEE PC.
I just heard about that actually.
And they involve this, and what this does is countries actually load the software on the PC, and then they buy a big stack of these cards and they give them to the students, and there's a little scratch number on the back, and this gives them the license keys to the software. And it's a way for countries to be able to manage legal distribution of PCs in a subsidized manner as part of programs they have in place to improve digital literacy and education within their country.
How does, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works, if you will, how does open source play a role in developing communities, given that not only is someone able to look at the underlying code which builds the software, but then in terms of licensing, in terms of, let's say, comparing something like Microsoft Office to, let's say, an open source Office-like suite, such as OpenOffice, etc.
In theory, there's appeal to the idea that, oh, if we do all open source development in a country like Egypt, we can create a local software economy. We're not sending colonialist rents back to large corporations in the United States, and everything will be fine and good. What is happening in practice is governments are looking at the relationship between their education investments, their desire to build a local technology economy, and ultimately to create jobs so that people are happy and they can get reelected. And they realize that the best way to do this is to take advantage of the infrastructure that they already have. In a country like Egypt, there's hundreds of locally developed education software programs and ISVs and companies that have hired, trained, and skilled people in the existing Egyptian software economy. And government and education planners look at that and say, well, do we want to build something from scratch, or do we want to feed into this? I was in Hungary 2 weeks ago at this meeting of people from the Hungarian Ministry of Education and then large companies that had facilities there, both local Hungarian software companies and also multinationals like Cisco, Intel, HP, and Microsoft. And what stunned me was that in a country like Hungary, where the economy isn't doing that good relative to other recent entrants into the European Union, that has a rich history of literacy within the country and a strong education system, there's a hiring crisis because they can't hire enough trained engineers and trained business people who know technology to work in all of these countries. And it's not because they're using licensed software as a model there. It's because a lot of the people who do get trained wind up moving to higher paid jobs in Europe or the United States, but mostly it's because they're not training enough people there and able to meet the demand. So the summarization of all of this is that governments are saying, the idea of open source is appealing, but let's look at what we have today and meet those requirements. And those requirements involve like this rich, 20, 30-year history of software and technology that they already have in place in other countries.
I think another important point to make beyond James' point on the decisions governments have to make, which we agree with, is Microsoft really does believe that there's a need for choice. And we certainly see that there's a huge amount of value to people who build around the infrastructure that we have in place, whether it's Windows or Office or our back-end technologies, whatever they might be. But we also recognize that people are going to make decisions and choices based on local needs, and that's fine with us. And if open source is one of the choices, that's fine too. There may be places where it's totally appropriate to have an open source solution top to bottom. There might be places where it makes sense to have an open source environment that sits on top of a standard like Windows. The question is, what are the local priorities? And what we've tried to do is to focus on these issues on relevance, access, and affordability, make sure we address all three of those, and then our technologies can be judged side by side with alternatives, and people make good decisions.
And you're not currently blogging very frequently, but James, you are on the road. You've got text, you've got some amount of photos, but what about video? Have you thought about really diving deep into the world of motion pictures?
I hate to say it, but I'm using LiveWriter, and LiveWriter doesn't support video as well as it supports photography yet. So I've actually taken videos on the road on my little short shot, and I'm planning to integrate that in there, but haven't done so
I
yet.
bet you have an inside angle on some of the future planning for LiveWriter. Maybe you can influence there, James.
Yeah, I'll try and see if I can pull strings there.
Well, videos just seems like a nice way of telling a story, or even audio. Without video, sometimes.
Well, one of the things you'll be seeing on our website, Microsoft.com WAC Unlimited Potential, is a greater emphasis on digital storytelling. So instead of just saying, here's a press release, here's a Q&A with an exec, we've actually armed a bunch of people on the team with cameras, a little lower end than the one you have, but we're actually going out and doing our own filming, and we're going to be populating that up on the site. One of the nice things about working in this area is the richness of the stories. I mean, we can sit here in a rainy cafe in Redmond and talk all we want, but it's pretty cool when you actually are out in a classroom seeing, kids working with computers. It's just really, really cool.
And where are you guys off to next?
I leave on Friday morning at 3 a.m. to Macau. Got a couple days in Macau, seeing a bunch of mobile operators who are looking to say how can they help bring affordable PCs with wireless broadband access to middle of the pyramid customers in a lot of different markets. And I go from there to Jakarta, Indonesia, and then from there to somewhere else in Indonesia that I hope is not where the volcano is, and they haven't told me where it is yet, but there's a volcano acting up in Indonesia, so I'm gonna avoid that one. And then I come home, I get home Friday evening, a week from Friday, and then I leave for vacation the following Saturday morning, which I'm looking forward to.
And where are you going to vacation? You're just down the street?
I'm insane on travel, unfortunately. I'm going with my family to go diving in La Paz, Mexico.
Wow. The weather should be nice. And what about you, James?
I only have 3 trips planned. I'm going to Kuala Lumpur, Bangalore, and Las Vegas.
And the Las Vegas, let me guess, is not for business?
Actually, it is for business, but if you go way off the strip, you actually encounter an emerging market. So,
Really? How far off the strip do you have to go?
I'm not sure. You go there more than I do, probably a mile or two.
It's pretty. Actually, Las Vegas is doing very well. Since I actually started going to Comdex in 1981. And for a number of years when I was doing the digital media work, I went there 3 times a year for Comdex, CES, and National Association of Broadcasters.
Oh, no.
3 times in 6 months to Las Vegas is definitely more than any human being needs to do, at least relative to trade shows. It's actually a great place to live, but for trade shows, it's a miserable place to be. So I've been going there for a long time, and it's doing pretty well. But I'm very pleased that James is going there for me this year, and I'm not.
There's a panel at CES this year on emerging markets, and I'm speaking on that. And it just emphasizes the fact that this is a space that's attracting more and more energy in our industry, and it's not just philanthropy. It's almost like the new thing beyond the environment.
Well, it's exciting. It's you know, you sneeze a little bit of information and you see what happens with it. I mean, it's a mind virus.
You know what else is really interesting is to put it in context. To when Bill got up in April with this idea of saying we want to help bring sustained social and economic opportunity to the next 5 billion, people said 5 billion. That's a pretty big, bold vision. And then I thought back a little bit. I said, well, let me put this in context to when I was just finishing high school, and in the late 70s, about 30 years ago, and I had a PC in my house, which was had a blue front panel with silver switches. It was an Altair 8080. And then there was this Harvard dropout that was out talking about this kind of wild idea of a PC on every desk and in every home. And I'd sit there and look at the blue Altair 8080 with switches and 4 KB of memory, and I'd think about on every desk. Well, okay, he might have something there. I can see how that's going to evolve there. But in every home, and I look at that thing, and I look at my mom's kitchen, and I look at my neighbors, and I don't think so. Well, Bill was right. He had a vision 30 years ago that has largely been fulfilled for the first billion in the world, right? The PC home penetration is there. The corporate penetration is there. The PCs are pretty much available. They're certainly relevant, and they're entirely affordable to anybody that wants them. But really what happens now is you look out the next 10, 20, 30 years and say, well, what is the vision? And that is what we've been trying to express with Unlimited Potential, is to go and help bring the value of technology to the next 5 billion, which is going to be a very long road to follow for us and everybody else in the industry. But it's a very cool...
You're welcome to join us on one of these.
Oh God, I would die.
You wouldn't die. Don't call me God.
Okay, surely you must be. Surely you must jest.
Yeah, I went to the woman that heads up PR working for James, Debbie. She had never been to an emerging market before, and I took her to India back in the spring sometime. And she got a really remarkable emerging market experience between the amazing meals in the hotels and then driving around in some of these, really pretty tough places to see in terms of the quality of life there. And then there was the time that we got stuck in the Delhi airport and spent 11 hours in the Delhi airport waiting for a flight to the Philippines, and being in the midst of a sea of humanity in a thunderstorm in the airport with the lights flashing. It's all part of the experience.
That's where you need video. That's something that
Debbie now has a video camera. She bought it last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she comes around with you then, like to different
We
places?
go on so many different trips that we all sort of span out.
It's a big world. So I mean, like right now, Orlando Ayala, who co-leads the group with us, he's down in Colombia doing a launch event down there. And as I said, I get on the plane for Asia shortly, and James goes somewhere else. I mean, we're all over the place all the time. We also, of course, have a business to run and products to build, which is an interesting challenge too. So we try to have 2 weeks at the beginning of every quarter where we're always in sync. Even that's challenging.
I can imagine. Wow. Anyway.
So anyhow, you should come with us though.